I'm not sure that we have the actual like empirical evidence to say that that once you get your PhD that you don't develop lifelong collaborations, right? Like I think it's probably really varied. I think some people hold on to some of those relationships that they formed during their PhDs, and some people don't. But I will say, like, I can certainly understand why some people are reticent to hold on to those relationships, because some of those relationships may have been really unproductive, very difficult, very like emotionally challenging, right? There's a lot of power dynamics in the academy. And I know from mentoring dozens of doctoral students that some advisors are really fantastic and some advisors are not. Some advisors give their students a lot of agency, but also direction. And some people, sort of create really toxic, dependent relationships where grad students feel constantly like beat down and never really like they're contributing. And that can feel really icky. Like, why would you want to maintain a relationship with somebody who kind of berated you, constantly? Even if maybe they had like good intentions to try to get you to think better and to be your best self, it doesn't feel good, right? To cultivate or to hold on to a relationship in which you feel really emotionally scarred by. And so, for sure, there are. Those are some of the reasons I think people wouldn't hold on to those relationships. And I think other people, I do try to encourage people, don't like be dependent on your advisor. Really try to have a team of people who are supporting you. When I was in grad school, my advisor was amazing in many ways. And there were ways in which like he wasn't really helpful to me. And so I reached out to other professors. I also reached out to a lot of professors who are emeriti or emeritus status, because they really wanted to engage with students. Like they were kind of at the part of their career where their legacy is what they're able to pass down to next generations. And so I had coffee with several professors who were like in their 80s and their 90s. And they would read my work and they would give me feedback, and they were like such amazing sources of wisdom. And I didn't have those kinds of like, those power dynamics weren't there in a way, because they had nothing to prove and they had a lot of time for me. So yeah, my advice to people is like, if your relationship with your advisor is not working out, like make sure you are really diversifying the people who are on your team.
Yes.
And hopefully those relationships will carry on as you pursue your career, regardless of whether you stay in academia or not.
Jack Cooper, it's great. It's a great pleasure to have you here on PhD Lunch. And we've been speaking a lot on, you have to come to my podcast. You have to come to a podcast every single time, even during the talking research. So welcome, man. And it's great to have you here.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. I've definitely been keen to come on here for a while now, so it's great to finally be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And just noticed that you have your Lego shark right behind you, and also a ship. Could you just tell us what it is about? Is it the Megalodon, or is it a great white shark?
So this is actually the Lego Jaws set. I unashamedly, my girlfriend bought this for me from Legoland for my last birthday. And we made this just over Christmas while we were both sick. And had a whole bunch of Disney movies in the background. It was a great time.
Yeah, so I can see because Jaws, I think it wasn't not long ago, or maybe it was last year, that they celebrated 50 years of the film.
Yeah, that's right.
A friend of mine invited me to go. And I said, okay. He never saw Jaws in his life. And I said, have you seen Jaws? I said, yeah, I've seen it in VHS and also on the telly several times. So I never saw it, so it's just 50-year celebration. And yeah, it's all about sharks.
I can't believe there's somebody on this planet who hasn't watched Jaws.
No, Jaws is a classic. And also we were talking about Sharknado the sci-fi film.
Oh, yes.
Like a whole series of sharks flying. You feel like, these are Pegasus from the sea.
There's a spectrum of shark movies. You have your masterpieces, which is basically just Jaws and nothing else. And then you have your utterly ridiculous movies that are so bad they're good, like Sharknado.
Yeah.
And then you just have your terrible ones, like Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus.
Wow. I do also know that there's a few other ones as well that I've seen. I think there was the last one. What was the last one, if you have in memory, that appeared?
There was a shark movie this year, I think, about sharks entering a crashed plane. It had Ben Kingsley in it, but I've forgotten what it's called. And I know a couple years ago there was a Netflix movie about a shark in the river in Paris or something. I didn't watch that.
Really? Well, if I know a recent film takes back to ancient history, Gladiator 2, and this one was mind-boggling. You become dumbfounded because there was never sharks in ancient Rome, and Ridley Scott decided to fill up the arena with water, which it actually indeed existed. Naval battles in the arena, in the Colosseum, but filling it up with water to do a naval battle where sharks of any nature, of any species, were swimming around, waiting for any soldier, any gladiator to fall down and getting eaten afterwards. So that was why is this? Why, there's no sharks. There were no fucking sharks in ancient Rome. So this would be a great topic for Jack to analyze.
Well, it would be, except I never actually saw Gladiator 2. But all I heard about it was this scene where there's sharks in the Colosseum. And I'm not an expert in ancient Rome. My first was, no, I don't think so. I also heard the CGI was not good in that scene.
Yeah, I think there was no really good CGI effects on the naval battles. So I think it's just only one that happened, and also the representation of 3D animals. There was no way that rhinoceros battering towards the main character and getting his horn wrecked in order to die. Yeah, so that what happened to that poor adult rhinoceros. But
This is making me want to watch Gladiator 2, though.
oh no, go for it. I won't stop you. I won't stop you. But there are also other ones. Don't know if you have seen Meg, featuring Jason Statham.
Yes, of course. Not only have I seen the Meg and Meg 2, The Dredge, I actually, as a teenager, was an avid fan of the books those movies are based off. So
really?
It's a lot. Not a lot of people know that they were based on books, even though it does say in the credits based on the novel by an American author named Steve Alton. And it's interesting. The books, they take their topic a bit more seriously, which I can see an audience for that.
Yeah.
But they do get progressively sillier and sillier of each book. I think there's been 6 books in the series now, and there's a 7th one coming. But the films, to their credit, they know how silly their topic is, and they just go for it.
Yeah.
So when people ask me, what do I think of those movies? I say, Meg 1 is stupid fun, and I have a great time with it. Meg 2 is just stupid. It's a really bad movie.
I mean, and anything about sharks, there's this sensationalism, which we will go any further when asking the question. But I believe any prehistoric animal that to the modern day, they become just so sensationalized of this animal is bad, so we must kill it, and so all kind of thing, which is also quite interesting because of the hunt for fin soup. And then, interestingly enough, that the fin soup kills even more people than the actual any shark interaction and unprovoked bites or any other sorts of nature. But we go further on that one and then asking about. But first, I'd like to know how this passion for sharks led you to go for a PhD on paleobiology? You've talked to me about the Legos, but do you have any other thing underneath your sleeve?
Yes, so my interest in sharks, I think we can date back to about 2003, and I would have been about 6 going on 7 at the time.
Yeah.
And I was very much in my dinosaur phase already at this point. The only holiday we could afford to go on to at the time was to go to London, and I would always beg to go to a natural history museum, and it was free, so my parents said, okay.
Oh,
And
bonus.
a documentary show called Sea Monsters came on to the BBC. That I think it was that autumn. And in this program, this zoologist named Nigel Marvin would quote unquote time travel, and he would scuba dive with the CGI recreations of these prehistoric animals. And that was already pretty cool in itself. Yeah. But one of those animals he scuba dived with was the Megalodon. And to me, it was absolutely mind-blowing that such a gigantic shark had actually existed. In the grand scheme of things, not that long ago. And since then, I wanted to know everything I could about this animal. I would pick up library books on sharks just to find the Megalodon section. But weirdly, it coincided with a bit of a fear of sharks at the time because I watched Jaws at far too young an age and hid it in the cupboard, so I never had to look at it again. But that interest in sharks sort of formulated from Megalodon and then from a later appreciation of Jaws as I got older. And that sort of led me to decide that I was going to study biology, which took me to the University of St. Andrews to do a degree in evolutionary biology. And although I did not actually work on sharks at the time, I actually worked on fruit flies, believe it or not. I did get an opportunity to intern in South Africa in the summers of 2017 and 2018. I went down to the cage diving industry there and dived with great white sharks up close. And it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I can still vividly remember the day I first saw a great white shark. And they tell you it's never just the dorsal fin. That's just in Jaws. You never see that. But it literally was seeing the dorsal fin first from the water.
Was it quite big, those great white sharks in South Africa?
The biggest ones I saw that were alive, and there's a key distinguishing there, and I'll get into it. The biggest ones I saw that were alive were about 3.5 to 3.8 meters long. So they were big, they were tanky. And the biggest one I saw was a 4.1 meter male that had actually been killed by a pair of killer whales. At the time, we got to dissect the body. These 2 killer whales called Port and Starboard, they do appear in the news pretty much every time they kill a shark. And they had started to appear around 2017, and we got to see one of the bodies. Never saw the orcas, but I saw the damage they did to that poor shark. So, following that, I was like, I've seen the great white up close. I definitely want to stay on sharks. But I still had an interest in paleobiology and the fossil record. So I went to the University of Bristol, which is the natural place people go if they want to study paleobiology. It's got a brilliant program of master's students there that for the last 30 years or so. And it was there where my sort of career came full circle. I met a researcher from Swansea named Dr. Catalina Pimiento, and she is the world-leading expert on Megalodon. She is the only person on Earth with 2 postgraduate theses that are based around Megalodon.
Wow.
Yeah, so she and her collaborator at Bristol, Professor Mike Benton, were doing a project on Megalodon. So I sent a pathetically long email, basically selling myself, detailing why I should be on this project. And amazingly, it worked. So I came onto this master's project. We published it, and having such a great experience doing that, I wanted to continue working with Catalina, who literally is, I emphasize, the expert on Megalodon. And she was actually at the time looking to start her own lab group, so she needed a first PhD student. So we came up a project. We found funding with the Fish Society of the British Isles, who thankfully confirmed us right before we went into lockdown in 2020. And yeah, the rest is history at that point. I moved to Swansea later that year, and did a 4-year funded project on the functional diversity of sharks. And you can actually read that thesis now on the Swansea University portal if any listeners are interested.
Yeah, go to Cronfer. That's the name. The name of it. He has a DOI. I also have a DOI, but okay, carry on. I know. So that's amazing. And and as you actually said, it was the circle was completed, and you'll be able to you've be able to realize that everything went down to the way you've ambitioned to it, and saying, oh, my love for sharks, now it's coming to a reality. I'm having Dr. Catalina Pimiento, the world's #1 on Megalodon, and now keeping doing this type of research, but at the same time you are educating the general public, students across university, those who are also maybe also interested in studying sharks. And do you still run some workshops, any public speaking?
I do a fair bit of public speaking, yeah. On top of my regular job here in Bristol, I do have a freelance career where I go to universities or museums and I will talk about sharks, and particularly Megalodon. There's an exhibit in Edinburgh right now called Giants, and this is based on giant prehistoric animals from the last 66 million years. It was originally an exhibit in Brussels, Belgium, and I was the consulting Megalodon expert, as they have this incredible spinal fossil from Megalodon in their collections that they wanted to display alongside all these giant animals. So now, since that particular exhibit was so successful, they've recreated it with casts of the fossils, and they've sent it to the UK. So I gave a talk in Birmingham when it was there about Megalodon and about sharks. And I also volunteer with a group called Sharks for Kids. It is this great organization that specializes in teaching children about sharks in various schools. It's based in America, but you can do virtual lessons and in-person lessons, and it's basically anyone who's interested in sharks can join up. So I do occasionally give talks to school kids in my capacity as work for Sharks for Kids. And my most recent talks included one just in Swansea, actually, where I revisited a school I used to cycle by every day to go to the office.
Where was it in Swansea?
It would have been in Sandfields, and that. So yeah, very, very cool to go back there and actually see the school and talk to these kids who are very, very excited about sharks.
Yeah, I do. I agree on that as well, because we as children, we get some fascinating from these gigantic sea animals that sparks a curiosity. Oh, do they bite? Why do they kill? And you think, like, do they kill actually people? And the first contact I had, obviously, went through Jaws and seeing documentaries on Discovery Channel with my dad. And he told me once when I was a kid and I asked him, do sharks kill, Dad? Do sharks kill people? Saying, no, they don't. They don't, because they explained to me the situation. So kind of a quick lesson from simple biology for sharks. And it was like, no, they don't kill, son, because they hate human flesh and they don't eat that type of meat. They only eat fish and any sorts of algae, if I'm not wrong. I'd say the only types of seaweed and any types of fish. And when they sense any human flesh, they just bite, and for them that taste is sour, and so they escape. That was the basic explanation I received from my dad. And another one as well is when they eat, they close their eyes. Some sort of that. So that's what I received from my dad. But you are able to explain a bit more.
Yeah, he's basically got the gist of it. That's a very, very wise words from your dad. Basically,
and also, sorry, Jack, and also not just Discovery Channel, but also from the documentaries of Jacques Cousteau. He has, my dad has has a huge collection of VHS from Jacques Cousteau. And I say, oh my God, I never thought that he's really cultivated he has from sharks, maritime life of Jacques Cousteau, and also the space, basically.
Yeah.
The planetary system. Yeah.
So basically, basically to get what your dad was saying, he's basically right. Yes, the bites of sharks on people, they do happen. And when they do happen, we hear about it because it ends up in the news. And we have had a few incidents this year, but they are exceptionally rare and especially unprovoked bites. And the idea that sharks don't actually like human flesh is totally true. When I was cage diving in South Africa, we used a tuna head and tuna slick oil as bait. And thankfully, we do not smell like dead fish. So the shark wasn't really that interested in us. The most bites either come from being provoked, or if they're unprovoked, it will more times than not be out of curiosity, because a shark doesn't necessarily know what you are. And the only thing it has to test what something is its mouth, which unfortunately has a lot of sharp teeth in it and therefore causes injury. And generally, what the shark will eat will depend on the species. Most sharks will eat fish or small animals. Great whites will eat seals and very occasionally go for bigger marine mammals. And actually, as your dad alluded to, as he was alluding to before we knew this, he mentions algae and seaweed. Now, it was only in 2018 that there was a new paper that found that a type of hammerhead shark known as a bonnet head was mostly eating seagrass, and we didn't know this until then. So there is absolutely at least one species that is more, we'll say, more vegan than meat eater, and that's quite a fascinating thing, and I suspect there's probably more out there we don't know about.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Moreover, writing feedback also pushes the supervisor to communicate better with the student if they write it in an oriented-based way, in the sense that it has to be professional and academic, which teaches the student to figure out a different approach to address the argument, reflecting too if the supervisor discusses the feedback verbally with the student. The more feedback the supervisor gives in a research proposal, but from an oriented-based, as well as balanced and constructive perspective, the more the student is likely to engage with and figure out alternative ways to address the academic gap while writing the research proposal effectively to submit it afterwards.
Well, it's kind of quite of a diversity, as you said, and anything that you say about sharks. For me, I have to completely agree. I cannot disagree on some sort of thing. But I'm curious. How many species of sharks exist in the world? Did you have also this question from the audience that you never expected to? So two questions in one.
Yeah, I have occasionally been asked how many sharks there are, and it sort of depends on whether you count rays or not. Rays can often be called flat sharks, but they're very, very close relatives of sharks. So if we go for your typical sharky shark, there are well over 500 species alive today. Wow. And then another 600 or so if you count rays. So basically, in just about any square foot of ocean, there's probably a shark somewhere nearby. They live everywhere, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. They don't all look like your typical scary great white shark. In fact, the vast majority of sharks are quite small critters, and an average Joe might look at them and not realize they're a shark.
And so, besides the hammerhead shark, the great white shark, and the Megalodon, well, the ancient shark, what other typically known sharks does the general population may know about it?
So what I'll do is I'll go across, there's 9 different orders of shark, and I'll briefly name some examples from them. The oldest are called the cow sharks, and these are sharks that have these very weird lower teeth, like your 6-gill sharks that live quite deep underwater. You have bramble sharks, which are very poorly known species. They're like suction feeder sharks living in the bottom, and they get quite big. You have your typical dogfish, your spiny dogfish, which you will see people occasionally fish out in Swansea, or your lesser spotted cat sharks, which are also small species that we get on the coast of the UK. You also get what's called angel sharks. They are these flat, almost carpet-like sharks that you can find off the coast of Wales, but they're extremely rare because just about every species is either endangered, data deficient, or critically endangered. We also have what we call saw sharks. These are very rare, poorly studied sharks that have these long rostrums, or like big, long, almost snout-like appendages on the edges of their faces. And those are 5 just different groups of sharks. Oh no, the cat sharks are part of what we call the ground sharks, which include things like tiger sharks, your oceanic white-tip sharks, your bull sharks. That's the most diverse group of sharks, the ground sharks. And the last other 3 orders I can think of, we have bullhead sharks. There are these small nocturnal sharks that live on rocks. We have what we call carpet sharks, which are all sorts of sharks that have sort of vague flat resemblances. That's where you get your epilude sharks that can actually walk on land. You get your gigantic whale shark is probably the most specialized of the bunch. And then finally, my favorite group of sharks is called the macro sharks. This is an order of sharks that have only 15 species, but they're extremely diverse. You have your great white shark, you have your makos, you have the basking shark and the megamouth shark that eat plankton. You've got freshers that have these extremely long tails they whip prey with. Wow. And you also have sand tiger sharks and tiny little crocodile sharks, and also the goblin shark, which is often rather tragically referred to as the ugliest shark.
It's so fascinating that lots of species of sharks, they are roaming around the world. And I never thought about it because we know that the UK is, the seas in the UK are quite, are violent and they're cold as well. And I never expected to know about any shark species roaming around the UK or even up in the North Sea or somewhere along those lines, because I thought the sharks were only inhabiting warm waters. I mean, especially in United States, the Caribbean Sea, and even in the Atlantic Ocean. I do remember one. We had a shark encounter. It was a baby shark. I don't know the species, but I was sunbathing in my hometown in Faro, and there was a lot of people by the coastline, and the lifeguards over there, they said you have to keep away because there's a shark coming here, and the people were curious and checking around. But I think that baby shark was distressed, probably was lost in the family, in the moms and the mom, the brothers, the sisters, brothers, the mom, the whole family, and probably was trying to find its way home. So have you ever had any sort of encounter like this?
I've never had an encounter like that, but I do see it on social media occasionally, and we do sometimes see a shark like near the beach, and sometimes it is distressed, and then it ends up getting beached. It's very rare for a shark just to end up on the beach. It might usually be right in the shallow part, and then if it ends up further up the beach, chances are somebody's pulled it there. Generally, it's hard to say what the shark might have been looking for because shark families are not that caring. Sharks do not show parental care. They either lay eggs or give birth to live sharks, and then they just leave them on their way, saying, right, off you go. And so generally for sharks, it's every man for himself, basically. Apart from very occasionally, we get some species that will form groups that we call shivers, and that might be because they're in a mating season, or it might be a search for food. It's hard to say, really. There's so much we don't know about the vast majority of shark species. Yeah. But yeah, I can't say I've had any encounter like that. I've been to beaches, but I've never actually seen a shark at a beach. The closest I would have gotten is maybe in South Africa in Mossel Bay. We did see the carcass of a dead seal, there, and I don't believe it had been killed by a shark, but the surfers there are very, very aware that they're sharing this beach with great white sharks. But there's never been a fatal bite in those beaches in Mossel Bay from a great white shark. The only fatality I know of was somebody scuba diving at Seal Island, where the sharks are known to hang out. And I think that's just a bit of a silly thing to do, as sad as that is.
Yeah, I do believe so. But again, it draws back to that human curiosity to see something they've either never or rarely witnessed. I was also interested in knowing about this thing. So I don't know if it's some sort of a tale or something like that, but I've seen on television that when the mother shark is pregnant and is about to hatch the eggs, right? There's this some sort of what is it called? Any killing spree from the baby sharks inside the mother's womb when they're about to hatch. Is that true at all, or
so? Yes, but only for a specific group of sharks. So sharks, actually, one of the things that makes them so interesting and diverse is that they have at minimum 3 different modes of reproduction, and that's something I don't think we see in even any other vertebrates. But what you're thinking of is a form of reproduction called cannibal viviparity. And this is only seen in macro sharks. And it's basically like you say it is. The babies come from the eggs inside the mother's womb. And then the babies that are already hatched will ultimately eat their unborn babies in the womb before they're hatched. We see this in sand tiger sharks. We think we see this in other macro sharks like great white sharks. And it's also thought that Megalodon did this too.
Oh.
And the reason we think that is because their babies that were born were massive. They were already probably more than 3 meters long. And to put that into perspective, that's about as big as a teenage or sub-adult great white shark. And we know this both from the fact that the smallest teeth correlate to that size, but also the vertebrae, we can use rings on the vertebrae, a bit like tree rings, to count how old the shark was when it died. And when we correlate that against how big the shark was, we can back calculate to the first band, which would have been the size of the shark at birth, and figure out how big the shark was. And those calculations from that Belgian specimen suggest that that particular shark was about 3 to 3.5 meters when it was born. So, yeah, and the only logical kind of reduction that would allow for babies that big would be that form of reproduction where baby megalodons were eating their siblings in the womb.
Wow. So this is quite a evolutionary biology here, where there's lots of sharks that are about to hatch, but only a few will survive. So it's kind of a infanticide inside the mother's womb. So just to test who is more able to survive out in the wild.
Yeah, and that would make Megalodon what we call a case-selected species. They likely did not produce very many babies. We obviously cannot say for sure how many because we don't have a time machine to go back and watch a Megalodon give birth. But most likely they were producing quite small litters, but those babies were big and had a good chance of survival.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. I have nothing to say about it. But besides that, we can learn from it. We can learn from the Megalodon. I wanted to know more about what is this Megalodon? What is its origins? How long did it survive? And what can we learn from the Megalodon in order to study any other shark species?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Now, for the bonus, stand-up comedy. That's right. You can participate in stand-ups and share your research by mixing it with humor and satire. It's an alternative yet bold to engage your thesis towards lay audiences, where a strong reading of the room, your personality, and human connection are a must to boost your confidence and communication.
Okay, so there's a lot of things that make Megalodon so interesting.
Yeah.
Its origin would have been in a time called the Miocene epoch, which lasts between about 23 million years ago to about 5 million years ago. Exactly when Megalodon evolved, we don't really know for sure, but the oldest fossils have been dated to anywhere between 23 and 18 million years ago. And then the youngest fossils occur at a time called the Pliocene epoch. The youngest Megalodon tooth we know of is about 3.6 million years old. So that tells us that Megalodon existed probably for around 20 million years. And that is a really long time for what was essentially an apex predator to exist for. And one species, notably, it basically originated from a long line of sharks called the megatooth sharks, which were these big sharks that only got bigger and started to diversify their diets over time. And we have Otodus obliquus from about 66 million years ago, right after all the non-avian dinosaurs kicked the bucket. And they were probably big fish eaters. And we know this because their teeth are multicusped. They have tiny little cusps on the side, and they have no serrations. But as we get more species, we have at least 5 Otodus species in total, including Megalodon at the end. And as we go through time, those teeth get bigger, those tiny cusps on the edges disappear, and the teeth become more serrated. And it's possible one of the theories for that is that maybe it's because they were changing their diet and starting to feed more on marine mammals, which first evolved around the time the serrations come about. So this was basically a long line of sharks that was getting with the times and getting bigger to eat more diverse prey. In terms of what people find interesting in Megalodon, obviously it is that gigantic size that stands out most of all. The most recent science that calculates maximum body length of Megalodon estimates about 24 meters or 80 feet. And that is enormous. And even the lower estimates of maximum Megalodon are already massive. So that is a pretty almost mind-blowing thing to think about. But all the other things about Megalodon are what I find interesting, like the fact that it lived literally everywhere. You can find its teeth on every continent except Antarctica. We think it was also likely a migrator, swimming from one end of the ocean to the other. And we think this because it was probably eating a lot of energy by eating whales that would have powered that. And in the last 5 years, we have started to find teeth right in the middle of the ocean, which might indicate that the teeth fell out when the shark was swimming there. Now, in terms of what it is we can learn about other sharks through Megalodon, the number one thing I go to is the effects of extinction, because Megalodon, we know from these clever geochemical studies that have looked into their isotopes, they've shown that Megalodon was eating pretty much whatever it wanted, and it was at the very, very top of the food web. So this means it had a huge ecological role in regulating prey populations and keeping ecosystems healthy. So when Megalodon became extinct, there was a ripple effect through that. And we see that whales actually get bigger. The biggest species alive today, we have the sperm whale and, of course, the blue whale. They do not evolve until after Megalodon becomes extinct. So a possibility for this is that these whales were able to get bigger and do whatever they wanted without having to worry about a giant shark eating them. And that might indicate that the structure of the food web totally changed from that. And we actually see that today in South Africa, where the great white sharks have massively declined. We, for a while, we thought it was the killer whales that were causing this, and they've certainly not helped. But the bigger killer has actually been overfishing and fishing programs that have taken sharks out of the ocean, only a few at a time each year. But they've done it for so long now that the numbers are so low and we're not seeing any sharks. And what this has done, it's caused smaller sharks and Cape fur seals to explode in populations. And that sort of throws the whole food web out of balance. So we think that this was occurring on a global scale through Megalodon. And we're starting to see parallels of this in places where we're losing sharks today. And I think that's an important thing we can learn from Megalodon. what happened after this huge giant went extinct, and what can that tell us about what might happen if we lose today's sharks, basically.
Probably would give birth to another evolutionary form of new species, new shark species, as has been happening across the natural history.
In many ways, yes. And when you look at the multiple mass extinction events that sharks have survived, we do see a pattern that it's generally the smaller, more generalized species that survive. And I'd say the biggest threat sharks have ever faced is probably us, and particularly through overfishing, which has caused their global populations to halve in the last 50 years. And now over a third of all shark species are threatened of extinction.
Yeah.
And I suspect that whatever happens at the other end of this, there will be some small generous sharks that survive, and sharks will carry on, probably well beyond us. But at the same time, why would we gamble with that and just go out and kill 100 million sharks every year? So I think it's a very fascinating thing to study, and that the loss of Megalodon can tell us that. And it's something that I tackled in my PhD. One of my final chapters was about how functional diversity will be affected by the ongoing extinction crisis for sharks. I can't say much about the results because the paper is still in review, but I don't think it's a spoiler to say it's not looking good.
Yeah. No, I do believe that anything that goes in that is about to get extended is done by us, essentially. And it's quite interesting because first of all, sharks fear us because we are consumers of shark, whether we agree or not. And we've been talking previously because of the fin soup, and also shark meat. I don't know if that's also true.
So I think it's important to specify that while shark fin soup and shark meat are definitely contributing, it is a bit of a misconception that shark fin soup is the biggest cause of shark declines. It's actually, I would say, it's more broadly overfishing, of which shark finning can be part of that to some extent. But generally, these enormous, essentially factories on ships, big commercial longliners that have these enormous nets that trawl up everything in their path, often including sharks, whether intentionally or otherwise. And I think if listeners want to watch something that demonstrates that, the best thing I can recommend is a film that came out last year called Ocean with David Attenborough. And of course, we have to mention the great David Attenborough, who turned 100 this year. Last year, he did a film talking about the importance of the ocean, and he talked about these commercialized fishing as part of that program. And it showed us just how damaging these trawling nets are. And that is a big, big factor in overfishing. And it ultimately impacts sharks. And it's the biggest driver of their current extinction threat. And I would say that probably applies to a lot of other marine life as well,
including whales.
Yeah, I imagine so.
That mostly we encounter them at the beach, at the seashores. So that also plays a huge factor. And learning also from the Megalodon is another interesting factor in order to understand shark behavior. And you just said about with their human interactions, they fear us, and they are also curious of us. And you said as well that curiosity stems from unprovoked bites. And I was interesting to know about it, that I was checking this yesterday at the Florida Museum's Shark Attack, and I saw a file that only 9 fatal bites occurred, and which, statistically speaking, is relatively low. So there's no threats, but there is this consistent claim that we know it already. This consistent claim of the media and any other features of pop culture sensation. Not sensational, but over sensationalize shark interactions, whether it's through nowadays AI generated films, AI generated videos, movies, podcasts, or any other sort of written media and content creation. I would like to ask, why do we still have this reception of media sensationalism, and why the general public still think that sharks kill humans, despite it's the contrary?
Yeah, and I think that's a very complex question in many ways. I think it would be naive to say the film Jaws played no role in that, because it was the highest grossing film of all time when it came out, and it basically invented the summer blockbuster.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's definitely far too simplistic to blame just one film. I think that's a get out jail free card some people play. I think it's far more complicated than that. I think it is down to how our wider media ultimately perceive sharks and the way they portray sharks. And that's probably been going on since long before even Jaws came out. To some extent, one of the things that Jaws was inspired by was a series of shark attacks in New Jersey in 1916. And that was a big sensational story at the time, because I think 3 to 5 people were killed in the space of a week. And when a great white shark was captured, the killing stopped. So people thought correlation is causation, therefore it was this one shark. And that's probably not true, because one of the killings was in a river where it's more likely to have been a bull shark than a white shark that did this. And I think pretty much since then, or maybe even before then, there's been a general instinct that when a shark is written about, they have to use certain key phrases. You'll see words like mold or monster, for example. And I think that is somewhat irresponsible. It's an easy way to get clicks these days. You'll see it in basically most newspapers. And there are some I can definitely think on top of my head that do it more. So like your Daily Mail, for example.
Yeah.
But even those other newspapers that might be a bit closer to my own political leanings are not innocent of this either, ultimately. So I think it comes down to what will generate the most sensation, and it is portraying these sharks as monsters when really they are complicated, complex, and fascinating animals we don't know very much about. And I think ultimately that fear comes from a lack of understanding of these animals. That's not to say that they can't be dangerous. Of course they can. If you go out to sea and you poke a shark and try to give it a hug, you are definitely putting yourself in danger if you do that. So to anyone listening who might want to dive with sharks, do not do what Ocean Ramsey does.
and don't be an arsehole either.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's obviously like literally assholes that they go out to the sea, they do diving, and they just want to grab the spine of the shark just to get a ride. And that'll be your Ocean Ramseys, who essentially ride sharks for Instagram clicks and then claim it's conservation, but despite not taking part in any action for conservation, or when they do, they take credit for the work of indigenous people. If people want to go to my website, you can actually find a whole essay I wrote about the Netflix documentary about Ocean Ramsey called Shark Whisperer last year, and it is an absolutely dreadful documentary that nobody should ever watch. It's so misleading in how it portrays this person who has actively harassed scientists who've criticized their behavior and has a very dedicated fan base who claim they care about sharks. And I think to some extent she does, but at the same time, why are you not sharing those videos you're taking with scientists to provide helpful data and actually tell the stories of these sharks? It's really got a sense of it's someone selling a brand more than conservation. And I really wish that wasn't how it felt, but it just is. And also riding sharks and trying to poke them is just wildlife harassment. And somebody is going to get bitten if you keep doing that. I think it's just like we like to test the waters and then see how it goes. With the sharks, go on.
Yeah, and ultimately that risk swing is in the opposite direction, where people say, you want to get a right balance. Sharks are not monsters that are out to get us. The data clearly shows that. but they're also not cuddly teddy bears, and you shouldn't go out and try to ride them. So I think the best way to do this is just understanding how important they are for the ecosystem, but also acknowledging and respecting the fact that they are predators, and that means that we should be careful around them. But also, if someone really, really doesn't want to risk getting bitten by a shark, you can just not go in the water as well.
Yeah. Just don't go into water. I mean, you can see sharks in maritime museums. They're alive in zoos, basically in maritime zoos, right? And that is best safe to say, yes, let's see a shark, but we can interact, but interact by distance. No need to just touch the shark. Just leave it to the specialists in order to study them, which they are more trained and they are more cautious and they understand their psychology.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Well, as I tend to see it, the whole point of a presentation is to make your audience see something that they didn't see before, right? And hopefully in a profound way, because if it's just an easy announcement that's not difficult to explain, why not just send a simple email or write a short memo about it? So the whole point of making a presentation or preparing a larger piece of communication is to make your audience see something that they didn't see before. And that means that means a couple of steps that are immediately derived from that. First of all, you need clarity about what is that actually? What do I need them to see? And you'd be surprised to learn how few people, not exclusively, but particularly in the science community, wouldn't be able to say that, to give a concise answer to that. So what is it that you actually want your audience to see? So, and once you've nailed that or have clarity for yourself what that is, you can ask the second question. So why don't they see it already? What do they see? What do they see that I don't? And what do they miss that I see already? And once you have that, you can kind of build a path between those 2 points. And the ultimate goal of a presentation is to lead them to what I would call the point of no return, which would probably coincide with that aha moment where you've told them everything that helps them really see what you wanted to make them see, where there is no going back for them because they've seen it in a way that they cannot unsee it anymore, and where it makes total sense because you've explained it in a way that makes sense using words that they can understand, using images and metaphors that they are familiar with.
Yes, something that is more exactly. It's more something that they are more familiar with. Something that is more common as they've seen, whether on TV or on YouTube. Something, in a sense, it's more of a touristic point of view. It's kind of like when they go to an event, they're attending a speaker, and you feel like I'm a tourist here and I want to hear what you have to say. And then something comes up and they say something that sparks them and I say, aha, that's what I want to know. And so basically
and that is that is a great approach, and that is so starkly different to what most people do. So most people, when I ask them how they would go about preparing a presentation, they tell me similar things. They first of all, they start with a presentation that they've already given a couple of weeks ago, and then they fill up all the other details that have come up since, and so until they discover, whoa, that's way too much information for 25 minutes. And then they start cutting, and it's still too much. And so basically they have that problem of overwhelming their audience because there's so many things that are interesting and great and fascinating about my field, which makes sense. I mean, you're doing a PhD about it. You're researching 5 years on it. Of course, there's more interesting things to say about it than you've got time to say it.
Yes.
But that approach that you've outlined is a very different approach. where you basically turn that upside down and you don't even bother about all the things that you can say, but only ask yourself, what is that one thing that makes that tourist look over, come closer, and think to themselves, well, that is interesting. I want to know more about that.
Sure.
And so getting clarity and starting there. So what is that one thing? And often it's really literally one thing only.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because there has been research showing that if someone goes and touches a shark or tries to ride it, it can actually cause distress in the shark. And there's telltale signs that they'll sort of bite at nothing, for example. And in this awful Netflix documentary, we see some sharks doing this, and they play it off as like, oh, the shark's charging her, but actually she's redirecting it. It's like, no, bullshit. that shark is potentially feeling very, very stressed because there are people swarming this animal. And something that they love to show in this documentary, but they never actually talk about, is this huge whale carcass where they filmed a really big great white shark, which they falsely claimed was a shark named Deep Blue. It wasn't. It was a totally different big great white shark. But what they never mention is that dead humpback whale would have been a great source of food for sharks. And when that footage came out, idiots, for lack of a better word, swarmed that to get with their cameras and their boats, say, we need to get a picture of the sharks that are here. Yeah. And that drove all the sharks away, which meant that those sharks lost a really valuable source of food. That's not helping shark conservation.
No, that is just like antagonizing sharks' behavior and sharks' behavior and the ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you've just robbed them of a survival source of food while pretending you're helping conserve them. So yeah, there's media has a very, very big role to play in how we view sharks, and I think media can be an extremely powerful tool for whichever feeling, both for that fear of sharks for Jaws or for that fascination of sharks, which I would argue was also caused by Jaws to some extent. I know so many scientists who got into sharks, myself included, in part because they were inspired by Jaws or the character of Matt Hooper, for example.
And any other documentaries as well. So the ones from David Attenborough, for example, and also those from Discovery Channel I've seen before. Yeah,
Discovery Channel used to be really one of the highlights for that. They've gone a bit off the rails recently, most infamously about 12 years ago, or maybe 13 years ago. They had a documentary that claimed that Megalodon was still alive, and there were scientists studying it, and those scientists were played by actors. It was all bullshit. But they only had a tiny disclaimer that it was fiction, and then they bragged about how many views it got and asked people, do you think Megalodon's alive now? And it was nonsense. That's not education, that's just lying.
But from the video, from the talks you were featured on the other podcasts that I've seen, I think you've said that the sharks, the Megalodon, has gone extinct for over 3 million years. Was that so?
Yes.
Right. So yesterday I was dumbfounded. It's like, this guy, it was an AI generated video, and I've seen tons of megalodons, the most giant one, plus smaller ones. Obviously, it was generated. They were eating whale. They were eating a great white whale, and he was explaining the behavior. He was explaining how the strategy of the megalodon, in order to trap the whale alongside with other fellow megalodons, the megalodon would start eating the whale, but not entirely to conserve its energy, but at the same time getting the whale to bleed it out until dying. And so the rest of the sharks, including the giant megalodon, would eat the rest, while the whale just would lay down, passed away. And there was this final question. They say, is the megalodon still alive? The the producer said it's up to you to decide to that, but we can't. But there was like this assumption that the megalodon still lives among other shark species, and I went, this is some kind of CGI shit, and I need to I must report this to Jack and see how it goes. And curiously, I saw, when was this posted? It was posted yesterday.
Wow. What
the
So
fuck?
what I find so funny about this is that the way you're describing the video, it sounds AI generated. I can tell just from
it
your
was
description of it.
totally AI generated, and the
And,
thumbnail was a harpoon holding the megalodon with a big quantity of people surrounding it.
So that question you mentioned, it says the end. It's up to you to decide if Megalodon still lives or not. No, it's not. It's either it is or it isn't, and it very much is not still alive.
I'll
We
send
know
you the
this.
video. I'll send you the video. I think he said it. I want to be 100% sure, but then you take your own conclusions. But I'll send you the video.
Yeah. So it's interesting because there's been like a sort of myth of megalodon survival for probably decades. And that's probably dates back to people seeing whale sharks hundreds of years ago and not knowing what they were. And megalodon's only been documented as a species for about 200 years. But it's really kicked off in the age of TikTok AI videos. And it's all nonsense. And I think Shark Week has a lot of explaining to do for their documentary contributing to that. But at the same time, I think people are fascinated by the idea that such a gigantic animal only went extinct about 3 million years ago. That is really not that long ago when you consider how old some ancient animals are. Like dinosaur extinctions occurred about 66 million years ago. That's a long, long time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like when people say, I've only ever been asked to my face a couple of times if Megalodon could still be alive. And my go-to in my head, I'll never say it to them, to their face, but is, come on, use some critical thinking. And the reason I say that is because if we just stop and think, we're talking about a gigantic shark that lived mostly in coastal waters, and we love the beaches and we love filming ourselves at the beach with our phones. We would have seen it by now.
Yeah.
But also the fact that with the hundreds of millions of sharks we're killing through overfishing, the largest sharks are most vulnerable. And that means we absolutely would have netted a megalodon by now. There is utterly no reason for any government, for whatever reason, to cover up megalodon's existence. I have been told in a YouTube comment section I'm part of the conspiracy covering up megalodon. Like, where's my money? Where's my money? I was like, sorry, imagine thinking that any UK government, present or in the recent past, none of those governments were capable of that. And that's not even beginning to talk about the current US government that is gutting protections for wildlife.
Jeez.
So, but also if we take the story in the Meg, where they lived in the Mariana Trench, well, the life down there is mostly microscopic, and that would not be enough to sustain one megalodon, let alone a whole population. And finally, by far the most common thing you'll see on the internet is, but the ocean's only 5% explored. Well, that statistic is not true. It's considerably bigger than that because we have explored the oceans for shipwrecks, for looking for species. And a good example, I think, is in the Indian Ocean, where there's been that enormous years-long search for that missing Malaysian plane, where we've learned so much about what the bottom of the Indian Ocean looks like in pursuit of trying to find this plane that they have still not found.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we have explored more of the ocean than people think, and we've not seen it. Yeah. It's not there, guys. I'm sorry. I wish it was, but it's not.
No, we're probably going to eventually. I mean, it's obviously more than 5% of the ocean has been explored, and we've been able, with our current technology, to deep dive into the dark of the ocean, and we managed to find the fish lantern, for example. I think it's called like that. But there are other species we can do. I mean, we've seen GoPros, more advanced GoPros going down to the bottom of the ocean to film any species, any new species that we never imagined to discover. There could be more evolutionary sharks in the future. We don't know.
Of course, and so it's important to specify that. Are there species living deep in the ocean that we don't know about? Yes, of course there are. And that there are going to be new species, probably including new sharks that we haven't discovered yet. There are new shark species being written about every year. But that doesn't mean the species we haven't seen are these gigantic whale eaters that were the top predators of the entire ocean. I think it's important to distinguish that. People will point to the coelacanth, which was a fish that was thought to have gone extinct in the Cretaceous during dinosaur times, but was then found in the 1930s. And that is an incredible story, considering the fossil record is just non-existent in the Cenozoic. But again, that fish was not a gigantic super predator.
Yeah. No, I do think that it is amazing. It is amazing, and the more we know about the ocean, the better we get informed about the species. And I think we also become less fearful of all these species, including the current sharks, and in the future new sharks to get informed and then taught in schools about, and saying, after all, they don't kill, even though they think they still kill, but they don't kill.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes back to improving our understanding of sharks. And ultimately, we're not going to care about the conservation of something we don't understand. And most fear derives from the unknown and not understanding. Yeah. So I think, it all builds up to understanding these animals more. And that's sort of the whole reason we do these sorts of things.
Yeah. I'd like to ask as well, how is it like to explain about the Megalodon in other podcasts, and you've talked about, and I mean public speaking, but what was it like to talk about the Megalodon on podcasts, on any other YouTube videos before this?
I mean, I love it. I genuinely cannot get enough of it. It was my childhood obsession, and I never in my wildest dreams thought I would actually get to be studying it and talking about it so much. So I literally cannot get enough of it, and I really enjoy doing it. And I love adapting the way I talk about it to the different audiences in podcasts. I might be talking about it to small children, like I was doing just a couple days ago for Sharks for Kids, or I might be go on a scientific charity podcast, like the World of Sharks podcast is run by the Save Our Seas Foundation. So the audience already is very knowledgeable about sharks at that point. Or perhaps some of my favorite experiences are either talking to people I already know personally, like yourself, who just want to know more about what I'm doing. Yeah. Or my absolute favorite podcast to go on is a podcast called Let's Jaws for a Minute, where these two film nerds are basically talking about Jaws. And I was already a fan of their podcast when they started. And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you had a shark scientist on? So I asked if I could come on, and I've been on several times since. I have an absolute blast doing it, including an episode where we talk about the 2 Meg films, and I get to talk exclusively Megalodon. I had an absolute blast doing that.
What was the question? One of the questions that you still remember from the hosts?
So the best question I've been asked, and not to spoil your listeners, is actually one you asked in the pre-scripted questions you sent me. So I'm looking forward to when we get to that. But I have been asked all sorts about like what Megalodon ate, and I was once asked, I think, is there any chance Megalodon could have been bright pink? And what's incredibly funny about that question, not just the image of it, but we've actually never found a complete skeleton of Megalodon. We actually have no idea what this animal looks like. I've put out a couple of papers explaining what we think it might have looked like, and albeit they might be considered a bit outdated now, as there's been some new work by this great scientist named Phil Stearns, who has actually hypothesized that Megalodon might have been longer and a bit skinnier than we thought, and that's potentially a whole new image to Megalodon. And so we think it might look like that. But ultimately, we don't know until we find a complete skeleton. So that means technically, using the scientific method, we cannot officially rule out that Megalodon might have been bright pink. And that's why I find that question so funny. In all likelihood, it probably wasn't, but we can't say for sure.
Just like the assumption of thinking that the Megalodon was actually pink rather than the known gray and white skin.
Yeah. Now, by all likelihood, it probably was gray and white skin and probably countershaded, like all sharks are.
Yeah.
But it's just so funny that we technically cannot say no for definitive to that question. And I think that's why I love that question so much. It's like, damn, you've got me. I technically can't definitively say no.
Oh man, that was a good one, and really appreciated that you've shared that that answer when you answered to them that about where the Megalodon was pink. And I also wanted to ask you about because the Megalodon, as you said, and I confirmed that they were gone extinct 3 million years ago. Does that also help them to living until that time by eating giant whales? Was that one of the major factors of their life extending and their roaming across the world too?
Yeah, absolutely. So Megalodon would have needed an enormous amount of energy to justify being that big. Yeah. And one of my papers that I published during my PhD, albeit it was a side project, not part of my official PhD project, was reconstructing the animal where that Belgian spinal column came from. And we recreated the animal, got its body mass. And one of the things we calculated from that body mass was daily energy requirements, albeit it was based on a relationship in the great white shark. And that suggested that a 16-meter Megalodon, so about middle-aged, about 2/3 the size it could have gotten, and it would have needed over 96,000 kilocalories a day on average. And the way it could have met those demands would have either been to regularly eat smaller marine mammals, or basically eat whatever it wanted, whenever it wanted, or to occasionally feed on larger whales. And if it did feed on larger whales, which we know it did to some extent because we have fossils showing bite marks on these whales from Megalodon, and what that would do is it would consume more energy than it needs, and it would store that energy in its liver, which would allow it to then swim across an ocean without having to eat again. So yes, eating big whales would have absolutely been a key reason for why Megalodon could roam across oceans and live as long as it did. But it was probably also a double-edged sword and likely contributed to its extinction as well.
Well, I can see that there's a great advantage to say that Megalodon lived so long to be gone extinct 3 million years ago, which for us, it's for the general public, it sounds a lot, but speaking from a paleobiologist perspective, it's not that long ago.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact we actually still don't know definitively what caused that extinction. Well, there's a few theories, and one of the main theories is that at the time, during the Pliocene, sea levels were constantly changing and ultimately lowered. And what that would mean is less area for Megalodon to move around in its coastal habitats. But that also means less area for its food to move around, less areas for its nurseries where the babies might have been. And what that means is there's less availability of food for Megalodon. And right as this was happening, the great white shark also evolved and was probably competing with baby Megalodons for the same food. So what that would mean is less food availability plus a bit more competition means that the Megalodon can't meet that huge energetic demand, and in many ways is ultimately probably starving to death by the end of its extinction, which is definitely quite a nasty way to go for such an iconic animal. But ultimately, we can't say definitively what caused extinction. That's just one of a number of theories.
Well, it's going to be quite hard then to find the definitive practical the practical conclusion of how the Megalodon gone extinct.
Yeah, unfortunately, with most prehistoric animals, it's hard to say what caused extinction. They can't all be as easy as non-avian dinosaurs, where we know a big rock came from space and killed them all.
Now, the World Cup is on the way. And
Yeah.
Have you been seeing a few games or just the highlights?
So it's funny, I'm actually not much of a football fan, but I will be watching tonight because Scotland has their first match.
Yeah.
Being originally from Scotland, you will know as well as I that Scotland does not qualify for the World Cup that often. We are really not as good as most other European countries. The last time Scotland qualified for the World Cup was in 1998. I was 1 going on 2 at the time.
I was 4 at the time when that happened.
Yeah, so I am not used to seeing Scotland in the World Cup. So I'm absolutely going to watch the Scotland matches, and I believe the first one is tonight at 2 a.m. So I will be staying up to watch that. And you know what? There's a sense of national pride behind qualifying for the World Cup. I'm not even a football fan, but when I saw they qualified, even I was like, oh, that feels good.
No, I do. No, I believe Scotland would run a great campaign, even though they're in a hard group as any other group.
They are, yes.
But
So,
they had the first game
based on
against Haiti.
I know they're playing Haiti tonight.
Yeah.
Maybe they win that. I have no idea
Yeah.
how good Haiti are, but they're obviously good. They qualify for the World Cup.
Yeah.
Morocco, we're probably not winning that. And Brazil, no chance. so they might, it'll be nice just to be there.
I think there's this possibility if they get in the best third places they could run through the round of 16. But
nice.
We'll see. But twisting the actual World Cup, then thinking about we are in this World Cup of wild animals. Mm-hmm. And I was decided, well, since it's the World Cup, why not ask Jack the best 11 you would put up front to beat the World Cup of wild animals?
Yes.
So what would be your best 11 of sharks? And you as the coach. And the Megalodon as the team captain.
So when I mentioned earlier that the best question I've been asked was one you had come, it was this one I was talking about. And I put some thought into this because I don't know that much about football. So what I've decided is I've got strategic reasons for choosing the sharks I choose, and hopefully listeners will learn a bit more about these sharks by the end of this way. So up front for my 2 strikers, I have the short fin mako, which is the fastest shark on record. Nice. So my logic is that shark will run through everything else and score the goal. That's my. And the second striker would be the great white shark, which is also a very, very fast species that has the same adaptation as the short fin mako that allows it to swim so fast, and it even breaches. It snatches food from under the surface and leaps into the air. Yeah. So I'm hoping that kind of athleticism will aid the great white shark in striking. For my 2 wing backs to get on the side, I've gone mostly for aesthetic. So I've gone for the black tip reef shark, which is one of my girlfriend's favorite sharks, but also a shark you will very often see in aquariums. So I'm thinking that'll be the player everybody likes, the one everybody recognizes. And then on my other wing back, I have the great hammerhead shark, who the great hammerhead can actually detect prey actually moving around the sea bottom. So I'm hoping that will give him an edge in getting the ball as well. For my 3 midfielders, I've sort of gone for sharks that it would be fun to watch them tackle other animals. I've gone for the tiger shark, which eats literally anything. It will eat all sorts of junk that gets thrown into the sea. So I thought the tiger shark can go there and take a bite out of whatever the opponent is. Albeit that tiger shark will probably get a red card for doing so. And I've also gone for the cookie cutter shark, which is one of my favorites. It's this tiny shark that's like a parasite. It will swim up to these huge animals that are much bigger than it and take these perfect circular bites at them. So that will also be a slightly filthy form of tackling. And then lastly, the fresher shark I was talking about earlier. So it can use that very long tail to whip anyone it's tackling, or whip the ball, perhaps, in this case. And finally, for my goalie and my 3 defenders, I've just gone for raw size. So I've got Megalodon as one of my defenders, and that's the team captain. I've got the basking shark, which is the biggest shark we get off the UK, and the second biggest shark today, plus the megamouth shark, which is a bit of a mystery, a bit of a little known shark, but also a big filter feeder. And then finally, the gigantic whale shark in goal. My logic being, just put a big shark in goal and nobody will score.
So I think that would be a solid 11, and I think they would advance through the group stages, and then when it comes to the round of 16 and round of 8, quarterfinals, semis, and then the final, I think they would go on pretty well. And curiously, just while you were sharing about your 11, there was actually this PS2 game. I can't remember the name. I don't have it in memory, but it featured animals, and there was this team there was a player that was playing a team of sea animals.
Nice.
I think it was dolphins.
So presumably the blue whale was in goal then.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably the blue whale. Blue whale would be in goal, and then a few sharks just on the wings, and then a few dolphins as the lone striker. Well, I mean that's the your 11 aside. So rock on at the World Cup, and
yeah,
I hope
I'm pretty chuffed with that, and I suspect they would do better than Scotland will.
That this also would be an interesting moment to say that you could choose those sharks for the Olympics too. I do remember seeing something like that. There was an edition of the Olympics, but featuring animals across the world, and the shark would beat any other type of fish in swimming competitions.
Yes, great white shark and the shortfin mako in particular are very, very fast species. And I believe Shark Week did a documentary about if a shark could beat Michael Phelps in a race, and I believe it could.
Did you see that one? When the
no, I didn't.
Michael Phelps?
I didn't watch it. I know of it, and I guess I didn't watch it because it's not really science. It's just sort of a cool idea.
Yeah, it's more of is reality show the appropriate word for this?
I would say it's more appropriate than documentary to describe some Shark Week programs.
Because I know obviously Michael Phelps was competing against himself, sorry, with a 3D model of a shark side by side. And the only thing that I've seen that he used the technology with his swimming skills, with the I believe it was the great white shark that he was using for the
yes, it was
the tail, right? And that's what they do. I do remember that one. I've seen it on the television before.
Michael Phelps probably owes sharks quite a lot for his success. Many swimsuits used in Olympic swimmers, the fabric and the surface of those swimwears are based heavily on shark skin.
Yeah,
because shark skin is so hydrodynamic. So actually, I reckon our swimming Olympians probably owe quite a lot to sharks.
Yeah, probably. That's what also one of the factors of this hunting, this shark hunting for those specific things. But it should have been another ways of trying to use the swimsuit or trying to replicate the shark skin through those swimsuits in order to avoid that shark extinction.
Yeah, you'd want. Nowadays, we have 3D modeling, 3D printing, which can be based on, say, fossils of the dermodenticles or specimens of the dermodenticles that come from shark skin. So that's probably a way to do it now, and I hope that's taken on board.
Yeah, maybe in the future, who knows? We'll see how it goes. What was it like to be featured on Nikita's podcast, Baffling Biology? I know you told me about it.
So, that's an interesting one. I would actually put a slight correction to that to say that the masterminds behind Baffling Biology was Lucy Murphy. Nick was her co-host, of course, at the time, and the two of them approached me together. They were just starting it. I was actually on their very first episode, and they later had my supervisor Catalina on it as well for a Spanish-speaking episode, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun to do, and it was nice to do a podcast in person, basically. I actually have the photo of that on my website even now. I had a lot of fun doing it, and it was great just to chat about. And there was some really, really good questions from the hosts.
No, I also watched it and watch it, but there was no video, of course. But it was interesting to know a bit more about sharks, and also Nikita was on the PhD lounge as well. The passion and the way you were speaking right now about your research about the Megalodon was quite equal to Nikita's predation system of mongooses and meerkats, and he was explaining everything from detail how they would attract the mongooses, how meerkats and mongooses would interact, and that's an episode, that's a talk worthwhile to watch it.
Yes, I've seen Nick talk several times about his research at conferences, including in Swansea, and he's got a very, very good way of presenting. He's an excellent presenter, and it does him a lot of credit. He's clearly very, very passionate.
Yeah, and I think that's just all the majority of the guests that were here. They were passionate about their research, and not that I don't have many PhDs on STEM, but they will come, and I do believe that there's plenty of them that I had the pleasure to talk with. Not saying all of them were awful, all of them were good. They have their own different levels of engagement, but overall, I really enjoyed having so many guests to share their research, but beyond of their research, what made them passionate about studying that specific topic, not just for the sake of the PhD.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, we went to various talking research in Swansea, and ironically, as much as I love seeing STEM talks, my favorite ones were actually all the arts-based ones. I loved the arts-based talks, and just seeing like why people were so into the subject they were into, whether it was, say, a part of history, or say a bit of culture they were interested in, or even there was a PhD in creative writing, I think, at one point, or about like the history of Christianity, for example. I'm not even religious, but I found that so interesting. And those were some of the best talks I went to. And I think it all comes from a place of passion, basically. And I think it really shows when someone's passionate, and that does wonders. Even when I know nothing about that topic, I come away feeling I've learned quite a lot.
Yeah, and I do think that we always learn. We always learn something, and even though it's not 100%, but absorbing the whole thing, at least we get something in that. I think the speaker you were talking about Christianity and these novelties, I think he was on the podcast too, and I think he was a 3MT winner. So
oh wow,
yeah,
okay,
but that was 3 years ago, if I'm correct. So yeah, I might get in touch with him soon, because I'd love to have him again on the podcast to talk about any updates of his thesis and any other things that he has been doing.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, I'd love to continue to talk about Megalodon and any other shark species, because I see your passion is driven, and it's right here. I'm just witnessing that. But I'd like to ask you, any advice do you have for those who want to do a PhD, particularly about sharks?
Yeah, and that's something I've thought about a lot, because I've had friends who have decided they don't want to do a PhD. I've had friends who wanted to do a PhD, but unfortunately haven't yet managed to find their project. And I've had friends who've gone a PhD, but haven't had the best experience with it. So there's a lot of different things to consider in going for a PhD. And I think the number one thing is that you have to love what you're doing. You should not do a PhD just because you want to have a PhD, or to just say, look at me, I'm a doctor. I don't think that's the right way to do it at all. Now, we can't sugarcoat it. Doing a PhD is very, very hard. You will spend 99% of the time feeling like you are the dumbest person on earth.
Yeah.
But that is okay. That is part of learning. And so I think the most important thing I would say is to have that passion, have that drive for what you're doing, because you can find a project in anything you're passionate about. But at the same time, it's also important to make sure you know what you're signing up for. And particularly if you're going to a certain university, you should have a good idea about who's going to be your supervisor, because a good relationship with your supervisor can go a long way for making the PhD a good experience. I was very, very lucky and very, very privileged in the supervisors I had, as well as Catalina. I had Dr. John Griffin as my other PhD supervisor, and the two of them are a wonderful team, and they helped me in different ways, and they're an absolutely wonderful bunch. And I do not take for granted how lucky I was to have them, because I've seen other people, even in my very own department in Swansea, have not so great experiences. I'm obviously not going to name names, but I've seen people change supervisors because they haven't had a good relationship with their first supervisor, and I've seen people stick it out with that same supervisor and not have a great experience. And there is something to admire about that, but in many ways, if you have a good relationship with that supervisor and also if you're passionate what you're doing, that is a great combination that will make your PhD really a wonderful experience. And I think I would also advise that be prepared to fail often. Like, it will happen a lot in your PhD. There will be setbacks. Yeah. You will often go through the first year feeling like you've accomplished nothing, and maybe beyond that, but you have done. You will have accomplished far more. So ultimately, my advice for a PhD in general is to have the passion and do your research about where you're going, ultimately, or where you want to go. But be prepared to go anywhere abroad, particularly when it comes to sharks, as there's not a lot of opportunities for shark research in the UK that I'm aware of. I know various people in shark science from the UK, and many of them can often go abroad. There's some great programs in Australia or in the United States. Well, however long, depending if you want to go to the United States or not, post-Trump maybe. But ultimately, I would say be prepared to have to go anywhere, which is a tough thing to do. I had to go to South Africa to even get a foot in the door in shark science. But I would also say that for shark-specific PhDs, the same advice for a general PhD applies, is to keep having that passion and to also do your homework about where you want to go and what sort of things you want to study. Yeah. Because passion is great, but there's also going to be a lot of hard work involved. And I think with that passion, you can absolutely get through that and take that on the chin. Yeah. So that's probably the best advice I can give to anyone who wants to do a PhD, including a PhD about sharks. And even in my particular case, I was looking at functional diversity of sharks through time. That was something that I really didn't know very much about when I started. I just liked sharks. But you can keep learning as you're going. You're always going to be learning. And I thankfully was able to learn quite a lot about functional diversity by the time I was finishing.
I think that's a solid advice you get. And as you said, you keep learning, even during your PhD and after your PhD, of course. As the only way you keep learning is you have to keep yourself active, and maybe write some posts on LinkedIn, for example. Just share bits of your research, write articles, trying to come up with a book project too, in order to share that wisdom you've collected and produced to the general public, academics, non-academics, and so on.
Absolutely. And make sure you've got other hobbies going on during your PhD. Don't spend all your time working weekends.
Exactly.
I worked a few too many weekends in my PhD, but thankfully, where I would often go climbing with my friend Matt, and that was a lot of fun too. So make sure you maintain all your interests and a good support network if you're starting a PhD.
Yeah, and that's a fundamental skill, the networking. Just not networking for networking. It's just acted naturally. So do you have any other upcoming projects that you're working on?
So Yeah, I've got a few actually. So I've got the last chapter of my PhD is still in review at the moment in a scientific journal. I'm hoping that will come out this year, but I obviously can't say for sure. And I've got another project in peer review at the moment, which I won't say exactly what it is, but it is about a great white shark, which I'm quite excited about. It was a project that I did not lead. I was asked to come on board, and it was a lot of fun. There are a couple of Megalodon projects in the pipeline, albeit I'm not leading them. And I'm very grateful for that, because the best papers I've ever been involved in are the ones I did not write, in my opinion. So those are some of the projects I have coming up at the moment. And I will tease that I do have one big project brewing under the surface that I don't think I'm allowed to say exactly what it is. But when I can announce it, you will know about it, because it'll be all over my social media.
Yeah, that's a nice teasing from you.
Yeah. It's a big project. It's something I've never done before.
All right.
And I'm very excited about it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to when I can finally talk about it.
No, I look forward to. And when you announce it, then whether you are at your early stages or in your mid stages, let's do it another one. And then
that'd be great. Yeah, I'd love to do that when it's out there. That'd be wonderful.
Let's have another go for sure. And then you can talk about more about the Megalodon. Any other curiosities we still don't know about it. Debunking these AI generated videos, TikToks, and all of that shit. And so, so where to follow you? Any social media? Your website as well.
Yeah, so if people want to look at my website to see what I'm up to and how they can contact me, particularly if they want to hire me for speaking opportunities, you can look at www.drjackacooper.com. But if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me at Cooper Paleo. So you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Blue Sky. You can find me on Twitter, but I don't really use that anymore because it's basically a Nazi site now. So I would recommend Instagram is the best place you want to follow me. But you can also, if you want to, my email is on my website if people want to reach out about any speaking opportunities. So that would be absolutely wonderful. I'm looking forward to hearing from people. Yeah.
So I think this is a great wrap up. And for the students and graduates out here, make sure to reach out to Jack Cooper. And if you're interested about sharks, you can just send him an email or just reach out to his website. He has lots of services to offer, and he's a top one if you want to talk about sharks and the Megalodon itself. Okay, so Jack, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure to have you here, and you finally came up, and it's great to have you. And let's do it another one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me too. And for the students and graduates hearing this podcast, thank you all for tuning in. And it's been a pleasure.
And being like, okay, this is the animal. This is how you can interact with it. This is what happens. And try to do much of the same is take you with me. And it's all very much kind of quite casual, I guess, in the diary format. And it started actually not even as film or as videos or anything like that. It started as articles. I used to write articles for magazines.
Oh, okay.
It started at school, actually, when I was back in Spain. Then when I moved to boarding school in England, I wrote for the school magazine.